part of QA Tech Week 2014. We'll start off, as we normally do on training courses, with a quick little introduction. So my name's Rob Blinko. I work at QA. I've been here for just over 20 years, actually. Originally employed as administrator, help desk support, that kind of thing, which I did for about 4 years. I was then an MVQ instructor for around about 4 years' time, just under 4 years. And I've been a technical trainer stroke consultant for the rest of the time, so just over 12 years. I'm currently employed as a Citrx principal technologist, which basically means I deliver training courses, I do a little bit of consultancy, a little bit of kind of design, troubleshooting of networks, those kind of points. I'm employed as a master CCI. So a master CCI is somebody who does mentoring programs for further instructors, train the trainer sessions, and looks after just general kind of instructor readiness for training courses. Also deliver training courses on behalf of Citrx, and actually produce training courses for Citrx as well. So I did a lot of the development of the XenDesktop 7 courses and the manage, deploy, help desk courses, etc. Networking and virtualization and hardware and software experience, I think, is basically Citrx experience. So I've been a CCI since 2000, so just over 14 years. I've been using Citrx products for probably around about 16, 17 years, mostly down the virtualization kind of track. So looking at XenDesktop, XenApp, presentation server, whatever you kind of want to name it, XenServer, of course, provisioning server, edge site, all products in between. A little bit down networking as well. So NetScaler, CloudBridge, of course, mostly NetScaler to look after XenApp and XenDesktop implementations, load balancing, gateway functionality, etc. Session expectations for today. Well, what I'd like to cover today, what I'd like to go over today is really basically what CloudBridge is, how CloudBridge kind of works, the kind of whole idea behind CloudBridge, how it sits in conjunction with XenDesktop and XenApp maybe, the flow of the traffic, when a user logs on, launches a session, how we can use CloudBridge to kind of optimize that session, and things like CIFS acceleration of traffic, things like, we'll have a bit of a chat about MAC kind of connectivity as well, if we have time, but really kind of concentrate on the HDX traffic, the ICA kind of session as well. So that's the main kind of points I want to look at today. I have a series of presentations, kind of slides or PowerPoint slides to go over. What I'd like to do as well is delve into a CloudBridge implementation, which I'll show you we have, a session to be able to give us some practical kind of demonstrations, work our way through some of the consoles, look at some of the traffic. Obviously, with the nature of the product, CloudBridge, the longer they run for, the more statistics you gather, the more information you get, which is, gives a far better kind of representation. So we only see a certain percentage of the data, but there'll be enough for us to be able to interpret it and go to and see the stats and be able to hopefully pull some information out. As Sam did say, our session is being recorded, so if you want to view this later on, obviously you can do so. We have the little chat window on the right-hand side. Hopefully you can hear me. I see there's a little note saying unable to hear, but hopefully that has been resolved. So there is a little chat window on the right-hand side. We obviously can put in little questions and messages in there, and if we have time, we'll go through them as we go through the session. If not, afterwards, I'm more than happy to email me. Hopefully you can see on the screen there's my email address. So rob.blinko, BLINCOE @qa.com. More than happy to send email questions across to me directly. Or we have an email account as well, specifically for Tech Week. As you can see there, techweek@qa.com, which I think is available as of tomorrow. I think that becomes active as of tomorrow, Wednesday the 23rd. So if you do want to pop any questions into there, or any messages, questions, technical kind of content that we haven't covered during this presentation, please do. Or again, directly email me, that's fine. Okay. So our first couple of points then, what I thought I'd like to start off with really is kind of what CloudBridge is. What CloudBridge is and how kind of CloudBridge works, really sort of what benefit we have by implementing CloudBridge in a Citrx implementation. So as you can see from the little side, it's a physical virtual appliance offering application and protocol acceleration. So CloudBridge is kind of our next incarnation of branch repeater. I know it does so much more, before we kind of all jump in and say, well, hang on, CloudBridge can obviously bridge a connection up to the cloud and Amazon Web Services and so on, as we'll talk about. But, from our perspective of what we're discussing here, if we take our branch repeater, if we take our accelerated CIFS data, our LAN versus wide area network kind of data, our HDX kind of traffic, CloudBridge is there and it can help us to compress that data, it can help us cache that data, give far better performance for people across the branch office kind of connection and wide area network connection. You can see different editions, so data center editions, large and small branch editions, and I incorporated a lot of these kind of points really for kind of future reference, so we can kind of go back over these slides and see the different versions that we have. So Windows incorporated editions as well. I mean, you can get an incarnation of CloudBridge which will incorporate, and you'll see over the next couple of slides, 2008 R2 or 2012 virtual editions to host things like DHCP, DNS, Active Directory, and so on. So if I have a CloudBridge which is there to accelerate my traffic, cache my data, improve my network, wide area network connectivity, can also actually offer Active Directory kind of solutions as well. You can see significantly improved Citrx XenDesktop and XenApp capacity and performance over a wide area network connection. XenApp and XenDesktop are great products, but so reliant on a network connection. If you lose that network connection, I know we have offline modes, we have various different kind of products we can use to give us remote connectivity. Really, if we use XenApp or XenDesktop and our HDX and ICA session can't be established, we've got big problems. Or if we can establish the connection, but there's a big performance degradation, again, we have big problems. So CloudBridge can really, really help us with some XenApp and XenDesktop traffic. And we'll see that as we go through our demonstrations and examples in a little while. Granular application of performance reporting and detailed usage analysis. It really does drill down into the individual ICA or HDX protocols. But there are alternatives to CloudBridge. We can use blue coat devices, we can use various different kind of devices. But CloudBridge is really the Citrx one that's allowing us to drill into those individual ICA sessions, allow us to see that HDX traffic, those individual virtual channels. And again, as we go through our demonstrations, as we continue this presentation, you'll see that I'll launch some individual applications. We'll be able to see the kind of thin wire virtual channels, the ICA kind of connectivity at a real granular kind of level. And then simplifies with integration with Windows appliance options. And that's that point I was saying before about allowing us to have DHCP, DNS, WINs, just regular Active Directory kind of functionality as well. I have users in a branch office and I want to keep as much of that data as local as possible. So what I thought I'd do over these next couple of slides, I'm only just going to kind of read through these relatively quickly. I mean, you don't need to just read all these points, you can see them yourself. And as I say, you can review the recording afterwards. But different kind of model editions of CloudBridge that we have, so data center editions. I'll just come back to this slide in a minute. Large branch office editions, as you can see, small data center, branch offices, etc. Give us different levels of functionality. So a lot of it is, is it a physical appliance? Is it a virtual appliance? How much resource are we kind of allocating to this? So how much CPU, how much memory we're giving to resources, which can then lead to how much WAN capacity you can host, as you can see, maximum HDX sessions or ICA sessions that they can accommodate. Do they do things like video caching? So we're talking about caching our ICA and HDX data, but also our video data as well. This CloudBridge CloudBridge Connector option. CloudBridge Connector is, as the name kind of suggests, a relationship up to a central cloud, a relationship up to a central kind of location, for us to create a link between our data center and back-end infrastructures. So things such as, if I skip forward a couple of slides, as you can see here, things like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft kind of functionality, Windows Azure, kind of Citrix-based implementations. And this is just a quick little example of a couple. It's not the be-all and end-all. We can have various different kind of cloud providers, and CloudBridge give us a connection to those internal clouds, those external clouds. And all going back, if we go back to our large branch office editions, data center editions, you can see all from our CloudBridge connector kind of options. So it's not just the branch repeater kind of functionality. It's not just caching our data. It's not just video caching our data. It's not caching our ICA and HDX information and our CFS Acceleration, but also maybe creating a relationship to things like Amazon Web Services and various different CloudBridge connections. So as you can see, as I kind of scroll through some of these different points, large branch office editions, you can see video caching you can do there. group mode, where we can have X amount of CloudBridge appliances working together across one connection to improve that connection, that session. And actually, if I remember correctly, you can have up to 32, I think, CloudBridge appliances all working together, offering connectivity or improvements over a session for a user. So it's 32 appliances. Obviously, we're talking depending on the number of users and the throughput you have, whether you'd have a requirement for such things. 32 appliances all working in conjunction with each other, sharing data, sharing stats, sharing configuration and reports, all to optimize those connections for your users. Again, remember, XenDesktop, XenApp really relies on that network connection because their group mode is all about doing that, remote client kind of connectivity, remote sessions. CloudBridge devices quite often work in partnerships, which can become quite expensive. We have small kind of business offices, about people who work from home, people who roam. Maybe you can use these with plug-in connections. If you're all familiar with Receiver, we have Receiver as a Citrx client. We could have a little plug-in for CloudBridge within Receiver. So launch connections and improve kind of home office connections. Other than putting an expensive CloudBridge appliance within somebody's house, I could use a plug-in kind of connection again as well with these small business appliance additions and so on, as again you'll see. So yeah, the purpose of all this is these lists, and you can see their virtual appliances as well, really just to give you a rough idea of the kind of throughput you get. If I was going to go out and make a decision, am I going to go for a physical appliance? Am I going to go for a virtual appliance? What kind of spec of appliance do I need? A lot of it boils down to throughput. A lot of it boils down to the number of sessions I need to accommodate, the bandwidth that I have, the functionality. Do I need video caching? As you can see here, virtual appliance is not supporting video caching. Do I need CloudBridge connectivity? Is it giving me a connection up to Amazon Web Services? Or is it actually just a virtual appliance trying to improve my connection to my HDX kind of session? There's various different kind of appliances you can have from physical or virtual. I put a little note here, hypervisor supported, really just to remind myself, to be honest, more than anything, just to talk about the different hypervisors supported for these sessions. CloudBridge, one of the things I've tried to improve upon compared to Branch Repeater is to make it more accessible to more people, to make it more available, to make it more kind of user-friendly, as again in the interface as you'll see, but also make it easier to kind of host as a business as well. So CloudBridge virtual appliances can run under XenServer, they can run under VMware, they can run under Hyper-V, they can actually run under Amazon Web Services as well as a hypervisor connection. XenServer, you can range from kind of 5.6 upwards, so 5.6, 6.1 kind of versions, vSphere 4.1 upwards, Hyper-V 2008 R2, Service Pack 1 upwards, etc. So it's not just a Citrx XenServer function. I know XenServer doesn't have, sometimes XenServer has a kind of, people do criticize it sometimes as a solution. Personally, I do use XenServer myself. I use it in quite a few implementations. And actually never have a problem, well, I say never have a problem with it. I get on actually really well with XenServer. I think it's really underrated as a hypervisor technology. I think it works really well. But if you're going to a business and they've already got Hyper-V, you're not going to recommend, let's take that out and put in XenServer. If they've already got VMware, again, you're not going to say, let's rip that out and put in XenServer instead, just so we can host these kind of appliances. XenDesktop as well, if you take XenDesktop as an example, I think there was a rumor at one stage where Citrx recommended Hyper-V as a hypervisor for XenDesktop 7. But actually, they just advertised that XenDesktop 7 is hypervisor agnostic. So actually, I don't mind what hypervisor you want. If you want to turn around and say, well, we have Hyper-V, then fine, I'll run XenDesktop 7 on Hyper-V. If you've got XenServer, we'll run it on XenServer, etc. VMware and so on. If you don't have a hypervisor, Citrx can offer one, being XenServer. And obviously, you can run all these kind of products. And what we tried to do is do a similar kind of thing for CloudBridge as well. Make CloudBridge compatible with most hypervisors that pretty much everybody would use. I think Citrx kind of appreciate, look, if you just exclusively made this for XenServer only, you are really kind of alienating a big percentage of the market. So, the whole purpose of it really is to make it more available, as we said a couple of times. And then my last little kind of point around that I just kind of wanted to say, which is CloudBridge connector kind of sections. I know we briefly saw this before. I know we kind of briefly saw this before, but to say these are our appliances, these are the virtual connections we can have. These are our links up to our centralized cloud, and that link up to that centralized cloud can be offered by CloudBridge. So these multiple solutions, be it internal or external, as well as just the branch repeater kind of function. So, any initial kind of points about that first couple of sections? Any kind of initial questions about the different appliance versions, additions? Anybody wants to pop into the little chat window? Do we have any kind of little questions or points to raise?
Nothing at the moment, Rob.
No? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Right, so looking at those different versions then, those different appliances, there's our different appliances that we can run. And as I say, I appreciate there's a lot of information and a lot of stats in those kind of columns. So, I'll leave them up there for a couple of minutes, and we'll go back a few times over these couple of presentations, and you can look at it in the recording to see all these kind of stats. I kind of tried to summarize the general kind of key overview points of what CloudBridge can offer us as a solution, and before we do our first couple of little demonstrations. So these are kind of sales points, really. If I was going to go into a business and say, we're going to implement a CloudBridge, and this is roughly what it can do, here's a kind of key list of the key features. So you can see there HDX WAN optimization. HDX is our ICA protocol. We're not really supposed to be referring to ICA anymore. We're really, especially in XenDesktop implementations now, and XenApp 7.5, XenDesktop 7.5, we should be referring to HDX. So ICA with our series of HDX kind of policies, so we can optimize our HDX connections. Application acceleration. We briefly mentioned things like Bluetooth devices earlier on, things like Cisco kind of solutions. Various other boxes that can do similar things, Riverbeds, the other kind of main rival, I suppose, to CloudBridge and branch repeater solutions. The thing about a CloudBridge, though, can really drill into an application level, really drill into those virtual channel levels, as we said before. There's our integrated Windows server, we know that. Plug and play. It is very much a plug and play. And I was, personally, if I'm honest, I was a bit dubious about this at first. I kind of thought, is it going to be really plug and play? Am I going to be able to get my branch repeater appliance, plug it in, and get a response? Is it going to detect the network? Is it going to optimize? And actually, it does. I mean, there's a lot of configuration you can do within your branch repeater and your CloudBridge kind of appliances. It really is, and you can take it to a really finite kind of level of optimization and tweaking. But I know a percentage of people who actually go in, plug the branch repeaters into the network, let them, put them into a kind of discover kind of mode, let them discover applications, and walk away. And it does do that. And they do say, as a lot of the sales kind of points of CloudBridge, I think it's a 20-minute install. You import the virtual appliance, you give it the initial configuration on your network, and then you just leave it. And it gathers data and it optimizes that data, which you can then obviously report back on and tweak. And it does work. I personally was very surprised about that, but it does work. And I'll show you this configuration again when we start a presentation in the next couple of minutes. So we can do plug and play optimization. We can do things like video caching. Now, of course, it does remember on version. If I go back a few pages, remember not all of these, as you can see, do support video caching. It does depend on your edition. But we can support video caching as well. So we do a lot of video transition, a lot of messages from the chairman kind of thing, video going around your network connection. Across a Citrx environment, has never been the best in the world. Let's face it, we can try and improve our ICA sessions, we can try and improve our video, but it's never the best kind of connection in the world. It's never the best kind of experience. But actually nowadays with our video caching, we can cache so much data locally so that when a user actually watches that video again or replays a video, or one of the colleagues within the same branch office replays that video, it's pulling it locally instead, thus reducing the wide area network traffic and thus really improving performance. Security and data protection, as you can see there, encryption. Branch repeaters really do struggle with data that's encrypted, with data that's kind of signed, with any data that's kind of protected in a Microsoft kind of sense. I mean, not just Microsoft, but in a kind of protected environment. We can now address that with CloudBridge, and you'll see we're going to do a section of joining it into our domain. So we can see, create a presence in our domain and make them use of the policies and get around some of our security implementation. Cloud connectivity, I've already said that. Quality of service, so bandwidth consumption, you really control that bandwidth consumption. Centralized management, there where it says centralized management, Citrx Command Center console. Not sure whether you know the Command Center console. And actually, if I just quickly drop out of this presentation and just share my desktop for a second, hopefully you can now see my desktop connection. If I just quickly drop to Google, as we saw in that little kind of presentation there, and I can actually just bring up the little slide as well, and it's not just a similar kind of point. As you can see there, Citrx Command Center console, get real-time reports and app flow kind of records as well. Well, Citrx Command Center console is something that's been around for some time now. If I just, there you go, just do a quick search in it in Google, you can see their version 5.1 is available. And you can download this from Citrx as an independent standalone kind of install. You can download it as a bit of software, you can download it as an appliance. There's various different ways you can run the command center. And as it tells you just in the first little eDocs paragraph, as you can see, monitor NetScaler, NetScaler Gateway Editions, CloudBridge, CloudBridge platforms, etc. So allowing us to monitor multiple Citrx products from within one console. And more of the Citrx solutions are starting to do this. More and more of the Citrx products nowadays are going back to, well, let's try and get one console to monitor more and more of our data. We don't want to go to the days of XenApp where we had the presentation server console and then it introduced an MMC one as well. It was really quite awkward. So I know, for example, if you take XenApp 7.5 and XenDesktop 7.5 and 7, more and more of the tools are there to show a lot of information in one screen. And that Command Center console is perfect for that. I mean, NetScaler, CloudBridge, Cloud Gateway, all of that in one screen. Really, really useful little tool. Definitely worthwhile looking at if you've never come across it before. Okay. Any points about those features? Any of those couple of little feature sets anyone wants to raise? Any kind of questions popped in, Sam, about any of those? No? Okay. Well, our CloudBridge placement then, this diagram, the purpose of this one, and this is our last one just before we do a little kind of demonstration of a couple of these points to introduce some of these things so I can just show you the whole idea of kind of CloudBridge. Is what I wanted to show with this diagram really is the flow of traffic, the kind of placement of our CloudBridge appliances. You'll have to bear with me a bit, art isn't my forte at all. But as you can see here, I've drawn a couple of little boxes, or attempted to. We have a couple of clients down here on the left-hand side, a NetScaler appliance within a DMZ, as you can see as well, a couple of CloudBridge appliances, and then I went down the kind of XenDesktop route on the right-hand side. There's a storefront box, XenDesktop, XenServer, virtual machine number 1, and just a little app V appliance over here at the top. We know now in XenDesktop 7 and XenApp 7.5, we no longer have streaming. So we have no on-demand delivery of applications anymore. It's now done via an app V integration. So we can integrate XenDesktop with app V. And of course, with CloudBridge, that's perfect for caching kind of data. So as a little example, and I can draw on this as well. So there's my kind of external clients on the left-hand side, as you can see. These external clients are connected to this CloudBridge appliance. And let's say that these clients here, I'll draw and talk at the same time. But these appliances here, these client devices here on the left, are talking to this CloudBridge appliance, and all of those are within a branch office. So all those are within a branch office location, local to each other, but obviously remote to our data center, where our XenDesktop implementation goes. So you can see there's our client devices making a connection to this CloudBridge appliance that's local. That CloudBridge appliance, then of course making a connection to our CloudBridge appliance within our data center. Now, I won't draw around that one as well. I think it would get a bit too confusing with all the lines on the screen. But that CloudBridge appliance number 1, maybe, in our branch office, talking to CloudBridge and appliance number 2 within our data center. And all our traffic being routed through these two CloudBridge appliances. So as our users log on, they launch our ICA sessions, our HDX sessions, the XML traffic, the HTTP traffic, never mind all the other regular CIFS data, your service message block kind of network connectivity, everything routed through these CloudBridge appliances. And incidentally as well, if I did go back a couple of pages where we've got our list of topics, a lot of the CloudBridge appliances do have a kind of a failover card as well. So if the CloudBridge appliances do fall over, they will just fail over to the wire, fail over to the network. So if the traffic can't direct through them or flow through them, you don't have a single point of failure, it will just flow back to the network and just reroute the traffic. But anyway, so the user connects to the CloudBridge appliance within their local branch office, which are connecting to their CloudBridge appliance within their data center. And of course, that CloudBridge is going to be linking then to your network within your data center. So going to Storefront going to XenDesktop, of course, XenDesktop communicating with our hypervisor presenting a virtual machine to a user. Now, normally, if a user was going to make a connection, a user would sit at that client device. They would then establish an ICA session directly to the virtual machine over on the right-hand side. So they would be sitting here at this client device on the left-hand side, and they would establish an ICA session which would go kind of directly to this virtual machine number one. Now, I know obviously if they're going to be remote, they'd be going to a NetScaler or a secure kind of point of connectivity. But in this example here, because we're going through CloudBridge, everything is routed through this CloudBridge appliance. So because everything is routed through this CloudBridge appliance, we would actually have our traffic go from our client device, if I pick my third client, to the CloudBridge, to that CloudBridge, and then to that virtual machine. So everything is just routed through these two CloudBridge appliances. These CloudBridge appliances, as it's monitoring that traffic, is going to then be caching data, depending on what type of data it is, how we configure it in our policies. Caching data locally at the client side here. So we end up with a cache of kind of video. We end up with a cache of our CIFS data, our server message block kind of data. That's supposed to say cache, but our cache kind of data. So if client device number 2 or client device number 3 maybe want to retrieve data as well, of course they can pull it locally from the local CloudBridge cache instead of going across the network to exactly the same virtual machine. We know in XenDesktop 7, this virtual machine here could be a server. This could be a 2012 machine, this could be a 2008 R2 multi-user virtual machine. And if a lot of that information has to be pulled simultaneously by every single client over here in the branch office, that's going to really impact this wide area network connection between the two CloudBridge appliances. So if one user can pull that data, cache it locally, and then users receive that locally instead, really, really useful, really reduce that network traffic. With our app V data up here at the top, depending on how I'm doing this, my app V data potentially could be going directly to the virtual machine. Now, is my CloudBridge going to really help me with that? I suppose it will compress the data. Now, it's not really looking at caching or anything, but it will compress that flow, I suppose, and reduce that wide area network traffic between those two locations. But my app V data could actually be sent directly to the client device. I could be app V on demand or Citrx streaming on demand delivering applications directly to users' machines. Excuse me, so my app V data here could obviously be flowing through these CloudBridge appliances, but to this CloudBridge device number 1, then maybe to client device number 1 for them to receive that app V data, but then again cached on CloudBridge number 1. So if a second user wants to open up that application, a second user wants to retrieve that cached kind of content, they can pull it locally instead of across the network every single time. So, one of the really big, and it's not the be all and end all, but one of the really big benefits of implementing my CloudBridge solutions is for me to cache my data, cache my application data, cache any common like data between users within a branch office for them to pull that information locally instead. I'll just clear that down a little bit. Let's just get rid of all of those. We do a similar kind of thing for external clients. So there's a client there at the top, which is potentially going to a NetScaler appliance within a DMZ. And that NetScaler appliance may be going to a CloudBridge, and CloudBridge again, as we had before, going to Storefront, to XenDesktop, etc. All that kind of flow that we already know. But in this example, this is the client device who's connecting from home. Maybe. This is a home office worker. So on this client device here, we have receiver. So we have Citrx receiver, and inside there we could have a CloudBridge plugin. So we have a little plugin inside there. I can't install a CloudBridge appliance. Plugin, let's pretend that says plugin. I can't install the CloudBridge appliance within the user home center. So I have a little plugin built into receiver, so that client device can then benefit from the connection flowing through that CloudBridge appliance. Do you get the same benefit as having two CloudBridge appliances? No, you don't. That client device is a dedicated client who's making that connection through that NetScaler to that dedicated CloudBridge appliance. That benefit is going to be for that user only. If I'm sitting at home within my home office, that's going to help me. If I actually work in an office of 2 or 3 people, again, that plugin's only going to help me. It's not going to help anybody else. It's for that dedicated kind of individual. But of course, that plugin's free. I can just download that. I can deploy it out to my client devices with, I don't know, you deploy your clients, your merchandising servers, your Active Directory kind of push out deployments, any kind of ways you push out client devices or updates to receiver to your users' machines. And they could then be caching data. We can make use of similar kind of results we get with 2 CloudBridge appliances, just not as much of an acceleration. And a lot of that is cached to them within memory on that device. And of course, as soon as they're rebooted, it's purged, but we can do disk kind of caching as well, depending on how you configure it. So we can do plugins on a client side as well to improve people who make connections to things like home office. Okay, so the purpose of this diagram really, it was really just to kind of show you that there are choices, there are alternatives. Yes, we can have multiple kind of CloudBridge appliances. We could also have devices that connect remote as well and use these little plugins. And I'll try and remember as well as we go into our CloudBridge appliance, there's a little plugin section where you can dictate kind of advertising points, where you can say when this client connects, they're going to connect to the CloudBridge device based on this IP address. So I can dictate, their point of connectivity. I'll show you when we go into it. Okay. Right. So our first point I wanted to demonstrate to you then was our kind of our CIFS optimization. So looking at controlling our CIFS traffic. So I'll come back to these points just to jump forward a couple of little steps. This diagram that we have here, this is our network that we have available to us for me to do a little kind of demonstration. So you can see here on the left-hand side, we have a management workstation. This management workstation then connects to a branch office CloudBridge appliance, which goes to then a router. And you can see these are on the 172.16.10 network, which go to a router, which go through the little WAN emulation kind of bit of software, just to kind of pretend it's a 100-speed network connection. It's then another branch office, into a data center router, which goes to a data center CloudBridge, and then a series of devices over here in our data center. So you can see I've got a couple of XenDesktop machines, I've got a XenDesktop controller over here at the bottom, and then a virtual machine being presented, a Windows 7 virtual machine being presented. I've also have, what have we got? We've got an Exchange box, we've got a domain controller, we've got a web server. So just a couple of devices on a different network for us to make a connection to. Right? So if I just share my desktop again, and I'll go back to our CIFS kind of data in a minute. I just wanted to kind of drop into a Toolwire session really. Toolwire are an organisation that Citrx uses for training courses. So when you attend a Citrx training class, if you haven't done already, you get access to these things called Toolwire environments, which is it's a business hosted over in San Jose in California. They do hosted kind of lab implementations. For us to produce this implementation for the CloudBridge for every person to kind of test it, to get the whole idea, is a little bit awkward actually. So Toolwire, as I'll show you in our session now, allow us to have access to these remote connections. And they're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week when you subscribe to a training course. So it's actually really useful. So if I share my desktop connection, so you can see there's my desktop, hopefully. And then if I fire that up, hopefully you can see there my Toolwire environment. So you can see a Xen Center implementation to a Xen server solution. You can see I have a Xen server up here with these virtual machines, as we briefly kind of talked about. A couple of branch office-based appliances. So there's my CloudBridge branch office appliance and little data center appliance as well. Domain controller, which is in our branch office web server, etc. This management workstation, that was that one on the left-hand side, if you remember. Management workstation, if I just go full screen on here, I made a connection to a couple of CloudBridge appliances earlier on. Actually, I did this a couple of days ago and let it just run over the Easter weekend so we can capture a couple of stats in here, a bit of statistics, so we can see a kind of bit of a flow of traffic. I have switched a lot of this off, so obviously we can switch it on and we can see this kind of flow. You can see this is our regular kind of screen of our branch repeater, a CloudBridge kind of appliance, and the kind of data. You can see the flow of kind of data. All this empty at the moment because we just need to activate it. We'll go to my monitoring tab. And we're going to go for all of these kind of points, but you can see this is where I can monitor my CA sessions and my stats and acceleration graphs, as you can see, my CIFS data, my local versus wide area network connections, so I can draw a comparison between them and just see is local area network being optimized for the same kind of level as wide area network, etc., through to all the configuration. As we said earlier, it actually kind of configures itself. It does. A branch repeater will configure itself, but we can come in and configure all these optimization rules, configure all the settings of what we want to optimize. You can see it. I've switched a load of this off just so we can activate it and see our kind of flow and see the improvements it kind of has. So this is our environment that we're going to connect to. So if I just quickly switch back to our PowerPoint slides, just go back a few steps because I did jump forward a few kind of points in here. What I just want to introduce was our CIFS traffic. So one of the things that our CloudBridge device can help us with is our CIFS optimization, our CIFS kind of traffic. So you can see, so CFS Acceleration feature, suite of protocol-specific performance for our CIFS kind of data, including enhancements to the CIFS transport protocol and other protocols. And we can do this for all our distributed computing environment. As you can see, our RPC kind of data, so our DCE, RPC data, our remote management, our remote monitoring. It doesn't have to be just our ICA data. Three main points really for our CIFS traffic that we're going to activate: flow control, protocol acceleration, and CIFS compression. The first one I wanted to talk about really out of those three, flow control, protocol, and CIFS compression, was really just our flow control. This is the kind of stable diagram really for CloudBridge. This is the one that you see on all the web pages. I've shown you the benefit of CloudBridge. There you can see without CloudBridge on the left-hand side and with CloudBridge. There's a user who's making connections between the two locations. And this is just showing you a limitation of TCP really, a limitation of your CIFS kind of traffic. As you transition data between two locations across your network, of course, it's all based on how much data can be transitioned based on the receiver, so the buffer. So when the two devices talk to each other, and device number one says, I've got this data that I want to transition across your network, the end device, the receiving device, the device that's going to receive that data, would say, well, actually, I can receive this amount of data at this moment in time. I have a buffer of this size. So we can send data up until that kind of level. Problem is, as soon as there's a degradation on your network, and it can be a really low, kind of small degradation, it doesn't have to be a ginormous thing. You get a degradation of 50 milliseconds across your network connection. It can really impact performance. And TCP would turn around and say, well, hang on, we've got a problem on our network. I need to kind of throttle back. I need to back off how much data I'm sending. If I'm flooding too much data across my network, it won't cope. So it backs off and then it negotiates again with the receiver. How much data can you receive? And they start really low. I mean, if you look at something like server message block kind of 1 connections, server message block 1 connections are tiny amounts of data that will transition across the network at any moment in time. I know we've gone past that now. We've gone to service message block 2 and 3, etc. But they send data in little 64K chunks. So it sends 64K worth of data and then double it and double it and double it up until the kind of link speed. So if you then start downloading something across the internet, you've probably seen you start at a really low level and you kind of ramp up and then maybe go up and down based on your bandwidth. We can see with CloudBridge on the right-hand side, because the two CloudBridge appliances are constantly communicating, the two CloudBridge appliances are negotiating their bandwidth between them. They're negotiating, we have this amount of link, we have this amount of bandwidth available to us. So the sending device and the receiving device don't need to negotiate. How much can we go up to? Because the cloud bridges would say, you've got this amount of bandwidth straight away. So they can consume that amount of bandwidth straight away. You can see this kind of circle at the top is trying to illustrate we can use half of that data, or actually a third of that data, and then go up and then go up and go up and go up to negotiate, because all the rest of this bandwidth is consumed by the negotiation, by how much data can we use. If we use a cloud bridge, on the circle on the right-hand side, as you can see, all of that's already been negotiated. So TCP flow control can be really, really improved by implementing our cloud bridge. And we can do that within our CIFS traffic, as again, you'll see in a second. One of the other kind of big benefits of it, as far as TCP is concerned, with the flow control with our CIFS data with CloudBridge, is the handshake. You know, we all know the three-way kind of handshake, and even more than that, five-way kind of handshakes you get with CIFS traffic and MAPI data, and even your Citrx traffic as well. On the right hand, or sorry, on the left-hand side, your device is constantly going backwards and forwards. I'm going to send data. Okay, I'm ready for you to send data. I'm going to send the data. Please send the data, etc. And negotiating as well the security and the encryption algorithms. But if we're moving to a cloud bridge, that's all done locally. So that, as you can see, that chatty traffic, that handshake traffic, is kept local on the left-hand side between the devices and the cloud bridge, which then across the wide area network connection goes to this cloud bridge device over here, which keeps all that data local. So you can see I have local traffic here between my device, my sending device, and my cloud bridge, and then just a tiny amount of data across that wide area network connection to our cloud bridge appliance, keeping as much of that data as local as possible. We have CIFS protocol acceleration, last but one, supported on all CloudBridge models, as you can see. TCP-based protocol flow control, implemented in a way that's highly inefficient and long haul. So CIFS, our Microsoft traffic, our regular day-to-day Windows-based traffic, is not that brilliant across high distance network connections. If you've got legacy-based environments, legacy-based links, really can struggle. And especially, again, earlier versions of server message block network connections, they really do send tiny amounts of data. And again, they're going to send those 64Ks worth of data and wait for that to finish, and then go and retrieve the next 64K of data. Wait for that to finish, go and retrieve the next 64K of data. And that can really take quite a bit of time. So with protocol acceleration, basically what we do is we can preempt that data. So we can request the first initial 64K of data, and actually then the cloud bridge device can say, well, the next subsequent packets are these ones. The next ones that actually I know it's going to request are actually these ones. So I'm going to jump forward. I'm going to predict what that data is going to be, and I'm going to grab it and pull it back. So actually with protocol acceleration, it can really improve that CIFS kind of data. And you can get ridiculous kind of improvements as far as speed. You can go from a 2-to-1 improvement, 3, 4, 5, 10 to 1, 100 to 1, thousands to 1 improvement as far as performance goes, because of that prediction and then the caching of data. One of the negative points, and I'm going to whiz through these last little points so I can just get to the demo, is these things that are sealed and signed. If you've got data which is encrypted or sealed, traditionally CIFS data can't be then transitioned across our cloud bridge and can't be cached. So what we have to do is kind of either switch that off, or we have to, as you can see there, configure it inside a policy. So we're going to go in and just basically switch it off so we can see our CIFS data. You can see that couple of bits set sealing and so on. You do a search on just things like Google for sealed and signed CIFS data. You see a lot of information about getting rid of that encryption algorithm, or that putting in a Kerberos authentication kind of set of credentials, so that then things like cloud bridge devices can deal with it. And then the last point there is really just illustrating the different versions. So there's the different versions of SMB or CIFS traffic that we can accelerate, doing that kind of prediction. Remember, it can all be compressed. It can also all do the TCP flow control for the handshakes, but not all of it can make use of protocol acceleration. It really does depend on the version of CIFS that we're utilizing, which boils down to the versions of the operating systems that we're utilizing as well. So you can see there, later operating systems nowadays, say 2012 to 2012, there's all server message block number 3 kind of data, which isn't going to make use of protocol acceleration. They still do TCP flow control, still do compression. It's not going to do your protocol acceleration. So, it's not, at the moment, it's not suited for every single bit of CIFS traffic. Right, so we can see some of this. If we go into our toolbar environment, so there's our management workstation with our CloudBridge appliances. And remember from our diagram, hang on, you can't see this, can you? So I need to just share my workstation. Sorry, let me just share my desktop so you can see that traffic. There you go. So remember my management workstation is on one side of the network connection, going through a CloudBridge appliance, which then goes to another, goes to our XenDesktop and our Exchange kind of servers on the other side of our network connection. So what we want to do really here is be able to see our CIFS kind of traffic. Now, if I just go full screen on here, I'll just minimize this window. If I go to my Exchange box, which is on my other end of my network connection, I'll just open up my computer in here. I can just do basic kind of points of things like mapping a drive. So if I just did let's map a network drive to, that's my Exchange box, to a shared on the Exchange machine maybe. Try and make a network connection. I don't know why I keep browsing. Finish on that using my set of credentials. Let's go for training. Citrx admin. And password and map a network connection. So you can see it's just mapping a network session. And within here, we've got just a couple of bits of data. There's a little video of ducks. It's just there just to generate a little bit of data. And you can see there's a real legacy kind of link on this. Well, the video is always going to be poor because the link, because that WAN emulation in between, but it's just there to generate a couple of stats and some statistics really. I'll just minimize that a second. What I also have on my desktop here is this little tool menu. And tool menu is basically just a series of scripts. These are a couple of little scripts that just run in here, just allowing me to just automate some of this traffic. So you can see there, number 2, CIFS copy test. If I just do a number 2 on there, it's just copying X amount of data into that Z drive that I've just created. And so, just running this kind of process, run this script a couple of times so you can see it. Now, while it's doing that, if we go to our branch repeater CloudBridge appliances, we can see that actually our CIFS, all of this is disabled. So none of these features are actually going to be improving. We're not going to be getting any kind of stats. If I go to my monitoring tab, and I'll try and look at any of the information about CIFS kind of data, we can't see any kind of flow of traffic here. We don't see any of that information. So if I go back into this and let's switch some of these features on. So let's go back to our appliance settings of configuration, and let's just enable our traffic processing. We should pretty much switch on pretty much everything, or most of these kind of functions. You can see some of these things not supported in this platform. But then I'm just now caching my CIFS data. I'm optimizing my CIFS information. And there's the other kind of little points to do with just server message block network connections, traffic acceleration, traffic shaping, etc. Right, so I'm now monitoring, and that's on my one CloudBridge appliance, the one closest to my user devices. If I go to my other CloudBridge appliance, let's just check that one as well. So appliance settings are switched off, so let's just enable the features on there as well. Good. So it's now enabled across the board. So we've now got all our devices with our CIFS data activated to be able to monitor the information. So the theory goes, in here where it's copying my data, if I ran that again, in theory that information would be going through and you can see it's going slightly quicker. We're going through my branch office CloudBridge appliance to be able to see this traffic. Now, the problem is, if I go to monitoring, and again I go to my CIFS data, we can see some of the stats, and you saw there the usage graphs actually, it's putting some statistics kind of in here because I've then activated some of the other features. But our CIFS data is still empty. And this goes back to our point we were saying before about our signing and domain kind of membership. And if I just drop out of this and just whiz back to one of our slides, remember this point we said here about CIFS protocol, very sensitive, and if it's sealed or signed kind of data, if we have sealed or signed kind of data, then our CIFS traffic isn't being optimized. Our CIFS traffic isn't being kind of routed through our CloudBridge appliances. So what we need to actually do, back into my toolbar session, is to get it so even though the features are enabled on CloudBridge, it's actually paying attention to it. Now that is my Exchange box. Well, there's 2 points actually. First of all, it's my Exchange machine. So if I go to my Exchange appliance, open up my local policies. So my Exchange machine, this is the machine I'm trying to copy the data to and from. And if I go into my local policies and security options, you can see we've got in here digitally encrypt or signed secure channel data, digitally encrypt secure channel data, and digitally signed secure channel data, which is all enabled. And because those 3 are enabled, we're not actually going to be seeing any of the data within our CloudBridge appliance. So I'm just going to switch those off. Now, this is a policy. It's a local policy. It's kind of going to affect this machine. But sometimes people are a little bit dubious about doing this, maybe on an appliance. You don't actually have to do this. You can get around it with Kerberos authentication, as I say, on the CloudBridge appliance as well. It's just considerably easier for us to actually just quickly do that in a policy and just do a GP update, just to kind of force that really. So I've just gone to my appliance that I'm copying the data from and just switched off any kind of encryption kind of requirements as far as the signed components of CIFS. But then go back into my management workstation. The bit I have to do on here, let's go into our CloudBridge appliance, is basically make this CloudBridge appliance a member of the domain. So create a relationship between this appliance and our Microsoft-based domain, so it can make use of those policy kind of restrictions, those policy kind of connections. Now, of course, this isn't going to be affected by the policy, but it can talk to machines and interact with machines and receive the security settings from those machines because it's within the same domain. So you can see there I've got Windows domain. This machine isn't a member of the domain. The other CloudBridge appliance actually is. This one isn't. So if I just go join domain, my domain name is training, I think. And my domain user, I'm going to go for Citrx admin with a password of password1. That's a bit of a guess, to be honest, so let's see what happens. I'm not sure those credentials, it might be administrator. But hopefully the machine will eventually join the domain or fail because I've typed in the credentials incorrectly. Let's go for training again. Be 2 seconds just to check on that. Basically what this will do, this will allow the machine again to interact with the domain. So as I say, it can then flow the CIFS data through these CloudBridge appliances. We can see that information, we can receive the data even though it's going through. Even though it's going through the CloudBridge appliance. Oh. Maybe. Third time hopefully is a charm. Oh, maybe not. Okay, sorry about that. I did remember the password eventually. So they're administrator with a password of 123, was with a capital P. I remember that actually last time I did try and make a connection, it threw a problem about having to change it. So if I go back into here actually, I can go back into training.lan, and that was administrator, password 123. And join that, and our CIFS data will then kind of flow through our traffic. Now, what I do want to do as well is I want to make sure that our ICA data can flow through this traffic as well, or flow through these CloudBridge appliances. So we can see that Citrx traffic, and we can monitor our HDX and our ICA kind of traffic as well. Now, if I go back, just while I'm waiting for that, if we go to appliance kind of settings, we can see that we've got traffic processing enabled and all that kind of data. What I'm actually going to do is I'm also going to, within here, just launch an ICA session, just so we can get some traffic as well. So I'm going to go to my receiver, I'm going to connect to my receiver appliance, which is 10.29.0.6, store web, that's the one. Which is going to make a connection to my XenDesktop 7 implementation. So this is going to allow me to launch an ICA session into my XenDesktop 7 solution, so we can see some ICA kind of data or HDX kind of data flow through the domain. And obviously what we will see as well is our CIFS data, our CIFS kind of traffic. This is our just receiver. I'm going to log on to here. It's just training Citrx admin. There's my XenDesktop connection. Now this is a Windows 7 based appliance, so it's only going to allow one ICA connection at any moment in time. But it's going to launch an ICA session, so you can see launching an ICA connection from my receiver through my CloudBridge appliance. So I'll just minimize that a second. Go back to our CloudBridge appliance. And if we go to something like monitoring, so we can try and see some of these kind of stats. The monitoring kind of data, the CIFS kind of kicked in yet. So our ICA data, and we'll give it a couple of minutes just so we can copy some data across as well. While it's doing that, for me to generate some stats, it's going to drop into here and get it to run some continuous tests, so you can see some of that traffic. So that was just sorry, I did that a little bit quick. That was just step number 5, is one of those kind of scripts. Just do that again. It was one of those little scripts just to automate copying a load of data between those two appliances. As you can see there, for number 5, run continuous traffic. So it'll just generate X amount of data that moves between these two appliances. So if I then go back in, we can see there we've got published application or desktop, so XenDesktop kind of session. We can see it's our CGP kind of connection, our Common Gateway Protocol connection, our variant of ICA. And within here, we can see things like our ICA stats. So we can go as far as our ICA priorities, so our different virtual channels, and I'll show you these different virtual channel kind of stats in a second. But if I just quickly scroll down, just so you can see some flow, we can see our different virtual channels. So as I'm connected to that desktop session, so I'm in this desktop session in here, if I just launch some applications, just kind of do anything really, run some resources in here as a Citrx kind of user, that's obviously flowing through our CloudBridge appliances, and it's keeping a track of our different virtual channels. It's telling us our client print mapping virtual channel, our drive mapping, our thin wire for our keystrokes and mouse movements, our multimedia virtual kind of channel. All these different points to show us our different levels of ICA data. And even if you just looked at that for the sheer volume of statistics, without actually any network-based control, the sheer volume of stats that it shows you as the flow of traffic is just enormous. You can see a percentage of the data going on here is low bulk transfer data. 80% of it, as you can see. A percentage of it is interactive kind of data and real time. Users are actually interacting with it at the moment and so on. So even if you just, I'm not saying you would use CloudBridge just for monitoring data, if you use them just for looking at statistics, massive amount of information. If I look at things like, if I scroll across to the right, acceleration graphs, so as our data kind of is transitioned between these CloudBridge appliances, I can see there my ICA WAN send throughput kind of data. I appreciate we're not doing a massive amount at the moment, but also as well your local area kind of data as well. And as users kind of launch sessions and ICA and HDX sessions, you can see these charts. I mean, they straight away updates with the volume of data that's going across your wide and your local area network connections and your virtual channels. Show you different virtual channels as users use the different data across the network connections. If I do things like local versus wide area network connections, there I can see local and wide. So locally, as my data is being transitioned across my network, my local data is considerably larger than my wide area network kind of data. And usually, I mean, I know we never kind of saw it before, and it is adjusting itself as it goes along. Usually when your local area data is bigger than your wide area network data, it's because your CloudBridge appliances are keeping more and more information as local as possible. You know, they're retrieving data from local resources as you're using these ICA and HDX sessions and the CIFS traffic, as that data is being kind of replicated between the two different locations. As I'm using my HDX session here, and I kind of maybe, I don't know if there's any kind of videos or anything that's running in here, if you have any kind of documents or anything we could run, any of that kind of data that is ran. Yeah, more and more of it, if I just run a little wildlife video in there, just so it kind of generates a little bit of stats. I'll do and just fire that up. Is there more and more of it is then just retrieved from local resources instead of going across the wide area network link, thus making a local area network greater than our wide area network connection. But you know, I'm not suggesting that we'd go out and buy a CloudBridge just so we can monitor kind of traffic, because that'd be a very expensive solution just so we can monitor our ICA kind of traffic. You know, we can use it for considerably more. And you can see as this is populating, you know, it is a case of letting it run for a period of time for it to capture some data. You can see various different types of XenDesktop sessions kind of running in here, and I can click on them and see the individual kind of stats of those kind of sessions and so on as well. If I go to things like connections, I go to my connections, there's my connections and the data that it's kind of been looking at accelerating on, caching, keeping a track of the kind of data. It's a little bit misleading actually. When you look at your CIFS data, and I suspect let me have a quick look at that just while I do this bit, because that bit didn't want to. Did my Windows domain credentials fail again? Oh no, you did remember. That's fine. Okay, it did join. So as the CIFS data does kind of populate, and as we do start kind of looking at our CIFS kind of data and retrieving information between those locations, and I'll run a couple of those CIFS connections as well. You have kind of optimized connections and non-optimized, which I thought was really misleading. You know, acceleration graphics showing the CIFS data. Optimized connections is showing you your CIFS data that's also doing protocol acceleration. Remember let's predict the 64K chunks it's going to go and retrieve. That would be under our optimized connection. Where non-optimized is still CIFS data that's being utilized, but it's only our flow control and our compression data. It's not our protocol acceleration data. So yeah, I kind of thought that was a little bit misleading. It's not just a non-optimized means it's nothing to do with kind of the branch office CloudBridge appliance. It's not going through. It is. It's just that it's not doing protocol acceleration. It's doing flow control and compression only. So the CIFS data can sometimes be a little bit kind of misleading. With our ICA information, if I go to something like compression, I can see my compression attributes for our kind of ICA data. And you do get all of these kind of raw nano matcher, micro matcher, little matcher kind of compression attributes. I've actually just got a little link here. These are a couple of little notes I just made myself. These are just a couple of little links just to show you. It's just links to the Citrx eDocs. And there's quite a few documents that do talk about these compression algorithms you can use and what kind of compression ratio you kind of should be expecting, you know, as far as these ratios go. So in ours here, ours is kind of a disk matcher. There's a little bit of disk matcher compression there. You can see a big matcher kind of compression. If we go back to that article, it talks about, well, we should get these kind of levels of compression. So if it's raw, we're talking 1-on-1, you know, these can be up 1-on-1. The micro matcher can be up to 10-to-1 compression, up to disk matcher compression, where it starts caching data and storing data locally on our branch repeater appliances and pulling that from local resources instead. Which can be a massive amount of information. You know, 100 gig of cache data a CloudBridge appliance can now accommodate. And obviously, the greater the compression storage, the better compression you can get. 100 gig of disk storage for the CloudBridge compression attribute, which is ginormous compared to what it used to be. And go to 10,000 to 1. I mean, it's a bit extreme, and you probably wouldn't see that on an average day. But the kind of compression ratios you can get. It massively is improved the space compression ratios from earlier branch repeater kind of appliances. You can see it's constantly kind of evolving as well, which is a nice little feature, and it does constantly refresh, as we're looking at all these kind of statistics. If I go to my configuration tab, there's a couple of points under configuration that I just wanted to kind of share. I know this is just bombarding with so much information, and it probably generates more questions than it actually answers, but there's a couple of bits I just wanted to quickly show you to get a kind of a rough overview of. And then any points, questions people want to raise, obviously we can talk about it all afterwards if you wish. From our configuration kind of section, there's a few little bits in here. Under appliance settings is where we basically just kind of switched it on. As we said before, we have things like CloudBridge plugins where we can put a little signaling IP. So if we had that user who connected from a home office, they were just going to connect with receiver using the CloudBridge little plugin. I can have a little signaling IP as a kind of a point of connectivity that they can utilize there. You can see things like features where I can activate that function, as we know. We can generate logging, and there's a massive amount of logging that we can activate in here. And you can see log removal logs. There's a couple of notifications. I saw these notifications earlier. I didn't want to clear them because I wanted to just quickly show you. Go to notifications. I actually quite like the notifications of CloudBridge. I think they're quite detailed compared to what some of the other Citrx products are. So as you can see, actually, this is only a little test implementation, but it does say this configuration and the amount of CPU and memory you've allocated to this machine surely is only for demos or proof of concept tests. For production, you need to have really about this amount, and your license is only going to give you this functionality, etc. So these alerts and these warnings are just kind of telling me, well, is your configuration optimal? Is it the best kind of thing you could do? So that was quite nice. You get some nice little kind of features as far as monitoring is concerned. But anyway, so back to configuration. I can do things like our Windows domain join, as you can see, as we saw before. You see our network adapters it's listening on, and stuff like that, licensing. But really the key point from this section, optimization rules. Under my optimization rules, I can do these, or have these application classifiers, or classifications of applications. And these application classifications, there's 25 of them, 25 predefined application categories, classification kind of groups. Scroll down this list. There's all the individual kind of application traffic it's captured as it's gone through these CloudBridge appliances. Now, I made a couple of connections to this the other day. And if I just scroll down, see there's Excel as well, PowerPoint. So there's my XenDesktop desktop we have at the moment, but there's also Excel and PowerPoint and these other kind of connections that it's established. So when a user connects through a CloudBridge appliance for an ICA session, it's not as simple as saying, oh look, there's an ICA session. What CloudBridge would also do is actually categorize it into, well, there's an ICA session for Excel. And there's an ICA session for PowerPoint, and there's an ICA session for XenDesktop, desktop, etc. Which what it then means is we can put them into application classifiers or groups to then apply policies to them. To say, if somebody connects with Excel and PowerPoint via an ICA session, they should actually have this optimization schedule. They should have these kind of settings. So if I came in here and I said things like, I'll come back to these application classifiers in a minute. If I go to my service classes, there's my different kind of policies that I'm going to apply, my service classes I'm going to apply to my users' kind of connections. And these service classes are really just allow me to combine types of data. So you can see there, for example, my ICA data with particular policies and priorities. So if I created one, if I go, let's create a service class just so we can see the point of this. And I'll call this Rob Office, for example. I can attach an acceleration policy to that. So I could say, well, what's this based on? Do you want to do flow control? Do you want to do flow control and caching as well, compression of the data? And is that going to be in disk or is it going to be in memory? This is a bit of an awkward question, actually, where your compression is going to be in your caching. You can cache into memory for a lot of for software that's constantly being accessed, for data that's constantly being utilized. Obviously, memory is going to be quicker, but it is going to grow and grow and grow and grow. And depending on how much memory you've got in your CloudBridge appliance, it's going to really impact performance. If you put it in disk, obviously disk is, is obviously going to be bigger. Your disk of your CloudBridge appliances is potentially going to be considerably larger than the amount of memory. And actually, if you put it on disk, it will wrap over into memory anyway as well. There's things that are commonly utilised, it will dynamically move into memory itself. And then if it's not utilised over a period of time, it will then start caching it onto disk. And then if it's then commonly utilised by a large number of users, it will then move it into memory again. So it dynamically adjusts. Personally, I never come into here and I choose things from memory. I always choose disk if I'm going to make this decision, because I'm thinking, well, it's actually going to dynamically switch anyway. And I think if I remember, the best practice recommendation was to choose disk and allow it to kind of self-manage as far as kind of location of where things will be cached and compressed. Anyway, so I could come in here and I could say the acceleration policy, if I wanted that, let's say kind of disk maybe. I could say, well, what traffic shaping policy are you going to apply to data that you put into this service class, or applications you put into this service class? And there's a predefined kind of list of traffic shaping policies. And you can see voice over IP, very high, high, medium, high, ICA priorities, etc. So I actually just skip out of this a second and go to traffic shaping policies. That's referring to this list. There's my ICA priorities. I could create my own, but if I go ICA priorities, I'm saying, well, ICA data has a very high priority, a priority of 256, as you can see. You can change the category. So any ICA data that flows through those CloudBridge appliances has a very high priority compared to other data, right? Because the whole idea is I'm going to have loads of different types of data flowing through these CloudBridge appliances. I want to make sure my ICA data for my XenDesktop and XenApp sessions has a higher priority than my printer traffic or my regular server message bot network connections. I want my audio traffic. Maybe I'm going to integrate this with Link to have a higher priority than my other regular server message block, copying data traffic. So I can come into here and I can create an ICA. I can create a traffic shaping policy, in this one called ICA priority, and give it a weighted priority amongst other traffic. But what you can now do with CloudBridge, and you couldn't do this before, couldn't do this with branch repeaters, you can also as well set the priority of channels within the ICA data. So that weighted priority there is my ICA data in comparison with other data on my network. It has a high priority, right? The higher the priority, the better. What I can also say with these four categories here is, and if actually I just drop out of this and go to my XenDesktop solution, is within my XenDesktop implementation, let's just fire up Studio, I can create a policy. You've probably seen from XenApp 6 onwards and XenDesktop 5 onwards, you can give multi-stream connections, multi-port kind of policy connections. So I could create a regular XenDesktop or XenApp policy and split my ICA traffic across 4 ports. Right? And this is without a CloudBridge appliance. Let's say we didn't have a CloudBridge appliance. I can split my ICA traffic across 4 ports. Right? So, and all that data can then be, I can say my printer traffic goes across a particular port. I can say my audio traffic across a particular port. So instead of the regular kind of 30-odd virtual channels you've got inside an ICA session, all going across one actual port on your network, port 2598, I can split it across 4 ports instead to isolate particular traffic. Speak to my networking team and get them to implement quality of service on my network to say anything that goes across, port 2560, that's all audio ICA data for integration with link servers, that kind of thing, for example. So I can do that, but I can do that without CloudBridge. What I can now also do is implement CloudBridge in conjunction with that multimedia kind of connection, a multi-port kind of connection inside a Citrx policy. So if I go into Studio, Studio will respond. It's taken a little couple of seconds. Inside a policy, if I've just created a policy within Studio, just so I can quickly show you the point I'm referring to. We'll give it a few more seconds. I know time's a bit of an issue for us, so if it's taking too long, I'll drop out of it and give it a few seconds to kind of come back in. Okay, let's come back to that in a second. Studio, it does take a bit of time sometimes. It's throwing a bit of a error message there. Hopefully it will kick in. Let's give that a couple of seconds. I've seen so many times. There you go. Studio so often will come back with an error message like that. Now, it's a bit of an off tangent, but if you do use Studio within XenApp or XenDesktop nowadays, quite often it will come back with a message like this updated first. And you've got all those ICA tweaks you can do about certificate revocation checking and so on. I would say just kind of give it a couple of seconds, be patient with it. If it does say, do you want to end this now, I just kind of go cancel, give it a couple of seconds, and it will then kick in. You can see there, I didn't do anything to fix that. It did kind of resolve itself. The bit I was thinking of, if I just switch to policies very quickly, quickly being the operative word, inside my policy connection, inside my policy node, I should say, you can see I can create a little kind of policy for that multi-port connection. So let's just quickly close that. I could create a policy, or I can use my unfiltered one, remember. Let's just go into unfiltered. Let's just edit that unfiltered policy. Hopefully, so in my unfiltered policy, I can, if I just do a search for multi-port, so multi-port policy, when you're inside a Citrx policy, and again, this is nothing to do with CloudBridge, but you can come into here and you can dictate these ports, can't you? So I could say, well, your default port is 2598, which is high priority traffic, and I could say, well, port 2560, well, if I put my number lock on, port 2560 is the very high traffic, and 2561 maybe is our medium kind of traffic, and so on. So I can dictate port numbers in here, but I have different virtual channels inside our ICA session. And these can then correspond to within our traffic shaping policies, these priorities inside here. So not only am I saying my ICA data has this priority compared to other data across my network, but I'm also saying particular virtual channels within that ICA data has a particular priority compared to other virtual channels. And you can see there real time, which is a very high data interactive bulk transfer background. So 0, 1, 2, and 3. So, you know, if I do switch back into here, 0, 1, 2, and 3, well, very high is 0, 1 is high, medium is 2, and our low is 3. Is the kind of correlation between the two of those. So I can split my ICA priorities within the ICA virtual channel as well. So I create a traffic shaping policy. I can link a traffic shaping policy with then a service class. So if I created a service class, I could then link a traffic shaping policy. There's that ICA priorities kind of one. I could say, you know, here, well, I have a filter rule. If I say add rules, there under application, I could pick one of those application groups. You know, we said before, there's 25 of those classification kind of groups, but I could have these application kind of groups. I could create my own Rob Office kind of deals of starting to kind of create. And I could say, well, any of that data, you know, I could pick one of those. You know, let's go for my Citrx protocols kind of things. And there's the applications. So I could say Excel maybe. You know, add Excel into there. And with my Excel data, selected a child application, the acceleration policy will be inherited in the service class. Okay, it's saying, look, you've got others as well. You have to take into account the other policies you have. My Excel data, I could say, well, from this source to this destination across this VLAN uses this particular compression algorithm. This, you know, DSCP is the compression algorithm it's going to use, and you can again look at all these. I mean, there's so many of these compression algorithms around. There's industry standard caching kind of data as well, and compression kind of speeds you get. I want all my Excel data to use this particular compression algorithm maybe, and compression data. It's actually using this SSL profile, this SSL profile for the encryption and the security aspect of that as well. You can really personalize individual applications, and to a degree even individual virtual channels within those applications across your CloudBridge connections to dictate the experience that a user is going to receive. You know, massive amount of personalization. When we said at the beginning, a lot of this is plug and play. Plug these CloudBridge appliances in, kind of let them get on with it, but you can really tweak it if you want to. I'll say the majority of people actually don't do this, but you can. You know, if I go back to my monitoring kind of tab, now, yeah, it's kind of been running for a little bit of time, and I haven't got a massive amount of data inside there. You can see some of these things are now populated. Now, ICA Advanced is one that I definitely wanted to show you. If I go to ICA Advanced, You can see inside here my ICA statistics. We haven't done a massive amount of data. If I just scroll down, you can see all of these ICA information, types of connections, the ICA filter performance, average incoming packets of TCP buffers and outgoing packets and so on. And as you scroll across the top, the kind of connection settings that it's experienced, and the ones that are open, the ones that have been accelerated, the branch repeaters have gone through, the connection IDs. You can see the channels, the individual virtual kind of channels. You see the states of the channels as well, and the channels that it's actually accelerated, and the performance and the speed and the throughput we've got of those channels. And again, so much data, so much information inside there, and the statistical data, as we said before. And you can even drill to things like top applications. If I go to top applications, I can see there across my CloudBridge appliances, these are the application data. So HTTP data, HTTPS, and ICA, and FTP, which is the most utilized data, which is the most the data that's generated the most amount of traffic, and the compression attributes, the send and the receive rates, as you can see. Top applications, you can organize them based on the different kind of categories, application groups. And those benefit to me creating those different application groups. I can then produce little kind of reports. So I could do a little kind of PDF report of this data as well. Export that report. And if I need to show this, it's a very graphical representation. If you need to show people, look, your ICA data is ginormous. There's the received data, the sent data. My ICA XenDesktop sent data is accommodating 76% of all the data sent across our network connection. So, and then, as you can see over this period of time, historical kind of data, I can see what it would be. If you need to produce reports for people that maybe aren't the most technical in the world, these reports are really good because they're so graphical orientated. Active applications, as you can see, again, so many stats and statistics. So, the purpose of the CloudBridge appliance, really, looking at compressing the data, looking at optimizing that data, looking at all the different, caching all that data across the network to keep as much of it as local as humanly possible. But our CIFS data, as you can see inside here, inside our kind of our charts again, our CIFS data, but also our ICA data as well. So XenApp and XenDesktop, compression, our multi-stream connections. So you can see with our compression points, just flick through a couple of these little sections. So take place transparently. And there's the little link that talks about branch repeating. It will show you that automated traffic between those two locations. And we can see things like our CloudBridge appliances now supporting multi-stream, as we saw. So not only filtering and optimizing traffic amongst different types of data, we're also optimizing the different virtual channels within the ICA data as well. Which is really good. I couldn't do that before. Branch repeaters wouldn't do that. And there's a little kind of demo. It shows you the little, excuse me, these little slides just show the virtual channels, what virtual channels fall under what subcategories. So when you configure the policies inside XenApp or XenDesktop, they're the kind of sub-policies they fall into by default. You can customize the registry keys to make changes to say, I want all my printer traffic to be a certain priority, or my audio traffic a certain priority. We can do traffic shaping, so compression of our data. So as we saw with our different virtual channels, our thin wire, our keystrokes kind of data, we'll keep a track of all of that. Our compression ratio, 100 gig of compression history, absolutely ginormous. Remember, the bigger the compression history, more data it can compress, more data has to be transitioned across the network because it can cache more data as well. So a massive amount of compression history, but it depends on obviously your device and how much resource you allocate to that device. So I know this is just bombarding with so much information, ridiculous amount of data inside there. I wanted the purpose really of just flicking through a couple of these points and those little demos. It's really just to show you the interface more than anything, just to show you, look, this is the CloudBridge solution. This is kind of what it boils down to. This is kind of roughly kind of how it works. It is a massive topic. It is a big topic. Now, Citrx have produced now a 3-day course just on CloudBridge, which starts off with installing it, the initial kind of configuration, through to activating CIFS kind of storage and configuration of storage and compression, through to the ICA data as well and watching that ICA data, setting up partnerships between different CloudBridge appliances, monitoring the data. There's 6 modules over the 3-day period. It's a lot of information to take in, but you do have those 3 days to then go in and really monitor and drill down into those individual bits of data. Really brand new course. I mean, it's been out for, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks, maybe if that. But we offer quite a few courses. You can see from this slide here, over 15 courses: XenApp, XenDesktop, NetScaler, XenMobile, including all the XenApp 7.5, XenDesktop 7.5 kind of solutions. There's now 2 brand new update courses for XenDesktop and XenApp 7.5, which will then incorporate with CloudBridge as well, and do a bit of kind of interaction with CloudBridge kind of connections. As you can see, NetScaler on the left-hand side, which will talk about that CloudBridge up until the Amazon Web Services, the essential kind of cloud points. Citrx certification, I'll just throw a couple of little slides in there about Citrx certification. You can be an associate, professional, and expert, and of course the courses lead you towards those. And here at QA we have 5 dedicated Citrx instructors looking at just offering Citrx classes, but also VMware classes and Microsoft kind of courses as well. Master CCIs that have won various kind of awards over the years. We do work very closely with Citrx to produce courseware, to produce our own courseware in conjunction with Citrx for authoring to then release worldwide. We have a massive history in conjunction with Citrx and an excellent kind of partnership with them. More information about Citrx courses, if you want to go to our website, the Citrx web page. Of course, you can email me, as I said earlier on. I'm more than happy to receive as many questions as you want about any of these topics or anything at all. And there's my email address and also the Tech Week kind of email address. So if anybody has any questions or points they want to raise, please do. Remember, the recordings will be available as of next week, I think. But any questions you do want to raise, send across to me, please do so. And I'll try and get back to you as quickly as I can with any information about this information. So it's just up to 4:30. I'll hang around for another 5 minutes.
Okay. Actually, we've got a question, Rob, from Chris Bartlett, who asked, what's the USP? When and why should I consider CloudBridge over other vendors' acceleration products?
Yeah, good question. I mean, one of the kind of key benefits of CloudBridge is the interaction with Citrx products. One, because when I'm in XenApp and XenDesktop again, and I'm configuring my regular policies, I can configure those to say, when I filter through, when a user connects through a CloudBridge, they implement these policies, so the interaction with XenApp and XenDesktop is there. But also as well because I can filter it down to an individual channel level. And if I use things like Riverbed is the main kind of rival. Riverbed can see my ICA and HDX. It can't see my individual virtual channels. And it can't drill into those channels and optimize the different virtual channels. So it's a lot more integrated with Citrx products compared to rival products. Any other points or questions anyone wants to raise?
We do have a question from Tom Edwards. Just a quick question on a subject you briefly touched upon during the Citrx XD7 design course I recently attended. You mentioned that the CloudBridge can host some Windows services, and how does this work?
Yeah, the CloudBridge appliance, I mean, depending on the virtual appliance that you have, can basically host a virtual machine. And it's nowadays, if I remember correctly, it's 700 and the 2000 series appliances, which can basically host a Active Directory solution. It can host, so it can be a domain controller, it can be a DHCP, Wins, DNS bot, and it's basically just a little virtual machine that runs within your CloudBridge appliance, like like for example an access gateway, like a NetScaler gateway, like a load balancer. It's another virtual machine that can run as a Windows-based appliance to offer that Windows functionality. 700 and 2000 series devices now offer that. The whole idea is obviously keeping as much data as local as possible. Okay, well, I'll keep my ears to the ground. Any other points? Any other questions?
That's it so far. Yep, I think we're done.
Okay, so thank you very much. Hopefully you see the kind of benefit of some of these points. I know, as I said, there's a lot of these, but hopefully I'm trying to get some down. I'll hang around on my email for the next sort of half an hour or so for any questions or points anyone wants to raise. But over the next couple of days, the next couple of months, any questions about CloudBridge or any Citrx products that you want to send across, please do, and I'll try and help you. Okay. Thank you. I'll just mute my microphone, but I'll be hanging around. Any questions anyone wants to send across, please do. Thank you.